Good evening, and welcome to Late Night Science. Tonight, we drift into the mystery of forgetting, not as a flaw of the mind, but as a secret gift that reveals itself when the world falls silent. Before we begin, I invite you to let me know where you are listening from. Somewhere, in the hush of the globe, another mind may be sharing this same moment with you. And if you wish to stay with us on these journeys through science and wonder, you can softly press like and subscribe, so the next exploration finds its way to you, wherever you are. Forgetfulness often arrives to us as something bothersome. You misplace your keys, you lose a name on your tongue, you wonder why a memory that once felt so sharp has become blurred at the edges. Yet as night gathers, forgetting takes on a different form. It is no longer an inconvenience, but a process hidden in the folds of sleep. It is as though the mind has an archivist who works best in darkness, reshuffling, discarding, whispering to itself, "This you may keep, but this you may release." Imagine your day laid out like a tapestry woven too quickly, threads tangled, colors overlapping, patterns without harmony. All the conversations, the scrolling, the half-noticed sights on a street, the thoughts that flickered in and out, every detail pressed into your memory's cloth. If you carried it all unchanged, you would drown beneath the weight of your own experience. Sleep enters as a weaver with scissors, smoothing and cutting, releasing threads so that the whole pattern can breathe. In that gentle loss, you do not diminish. You are preserved. Science tells us that forgetting is not the opposite of memory, but its partner. For every recollection that endures, countless others must soften and fade. Otherwise, the brain would be like a room with no empty space, cluttered and airless, impossible to live in. Forgetting is the act of opening a window, clearing a shelf, letting air and light move freely again. Without it, there would be no clarity, no focus, no ability to choose what matters. And so when you lay your head against the pillow, something extraordinary begins. You may think you are simply drifting, but within the quiet chambers of your mind, entire libraries are being rearranged. The night becomes a caretaker, moving softly among the stacks, deciding which pages must be preserved and which can gently turn to dust. The strange paradox is this: in order to remember, you must also forget. If you reflect on the day just past, you may already feel it. Hours ago, the moments felt sharp, filled with urgency. Now they blur, softened by the slow tide of evening. What you retain is not everything, but only what your mind deems worthy of carrying into tomorrow. The chatter is hushed, the noise dissolves, and a quieter clarity begins to form. This forgetting, far from being a defect, is the secret machinery that allows you to become new again each morning. There is comfort in knowing that not everything must be held. You are not required to grip each detail, each passing thought, each worry that once seemed so vital. Sleep comes, forgetting follows, and the burden of constant remembering is lifted. In this release, the mind is given room to dream, to heal, to be. Think of the sky at dusk. All day long it has carried clouds, weather, sun, shifting light. Then twilight falls, and the colors fade into darkness. The sky does not resist the loss of its detail. It lets go, and in that letting go, it becomes vast again. Your mind, too, knows this art. Forgetting is its twilight, its graceful fading, its widening into space, and yet a question lingers. Why does this forgetting arrive so powerfully at night? Why do dreams scatter like mist? Why do thoughts dissolve as sleep deepens? Why does morning greet us with gaps where yesterday once was? There is science here, in the fragile architecture of memory, in the neurons that fire and fade, in the patterns that hold and those that vanish. But there is also mystery. The sense that forgetting is not only biological, but profoundly human, part of what allows us to live with lightness instead of being trapped by endless accumulation. So tonight, as we drift together through this exploration, we will not treat forgetting as an enemy. We will see it instead as a companion, a gentle guide through the corridors of night, a silent archivist who loves us enough to carry some of our burdens away. As you listen, let the thought itself become a comfort. You do not need to keep everything. You may release, you may let go, and in that letting go, you may find a deeper kind of rest. The night continues its work even now, around you and within you. The archivist is awake, the scissors are trimming, the shelves are being cleared. Tomorrow you will wake lighter, clearer, renewed. But for now, you are here, in this space between waking and sleep, feeling the gentle power of forgetting as it begins its soft descent. And perhaps, as you float on this thought, you might wonder, if forgetting is not a failure, but a gift, then what is memory itself built upon? What is the fragile structure that holds a moment in place even as others dissolve into silence? Memory has always been imagined as something solid, as though our minds contained a vault where every experience was stored in careful order. But the truth is far more delicate and far more beautiful. Memory is not stone, not steel, not a fixed archive bound by certainty. It is a living tapestry, fragile and ever-changing, woven across the shimmering threads of billions of neurons. Every sound you hear, every glance you take, every fleeting sensation of touch or taste or thought presses itself into this fabric. And yet not all of it remains. Picture for a moment the loom of your mind. Neurons fire like shuttles passing threads back and forth. Synapses tighten, loosen, shift. The pattern that emerges is never complete, never finished, always alive. What you call memory is not a picture preserved, but a pattern rewritten each time it is recalled. To remember is to rebuild, to reweave. Each act of recollection is not a retrieval, but a reconstruction, partial and fragile. A story told again with threads that sometimes slip, that sometimes fray, that sometimes vanish entirely. Science has shown that a memory is not a single unit, sitting in a single location, but a network distributed across the brain. One region holds the sensory trace, another the emotional tone, another the contextual detail. To recall even the simplest moment is to summon an orchestra, scattered across the brain's landscape, playing together in uncertain harmony. If one section falters, the memory shifts in tone. If one section falls silent, the memory may lose color, lose sharpness, or even dissolve entirely. It is fragile, yes, but that fragility is not weakness. It is the very condition that allows memory to remain fluid, to bend and reshape itself around the contours of your changing life. What you remember today is not always what you remembered yesterday. Time softens the sharp edges, rearranges the details, blends some parts with others. You are not a static being. You are a flowing story, and memory is the ink that rewrites itself in the margins, allowing you to grow, to adapt, to remain alive. Think of all the moments that never rise again, the faces you glimpsed in passing today, the sound of a car that roared by, the words on a page you did not pause to hold. These fall through the fabric almost as soon as they are stitched. They are not kept, because to keep them all would drown the loom in noise. Forgetting here begins to show itself not as absence, but as an act of necessary pruning. The fragile architecture of memory must have open space, gaps through which new threads can pass. You might imagine your memories as a great cathedral of glass. Each pane catches light, color, image, but glass is brittle. Some panes crack, some fall, some are replaced by new designs. Over time, the whole structure changes while still appearing to be one cathedral. Forgetting is not the shattering of the cathedral. It is part of its ongoing renovation, its renewal, its survival across the years. Within the brain, this fragility is written into biology itself. Neurons connect through synapses, microscopic junctions where chemicals leap across a tiny gap. Each memory leaves a trace in these junctions, strengthening some, weakening others. The connections are not fixed. They are sculpted by use. Those that are reinforced by repetition and significance grow stronger, as though woven in golden thread. Those that are not fade, loosen, unravel, like threads dissolving back into the loom. This is not failure. It is the fabric of memory breathing, choosing which patterns to keep visible and which to let go. Even the strongest memories are not immune. They change with each telling. To recall a moment is to make it vulnerable, to edit it as you bring it forth. Scientists call this reconsolidation. The act of retrieving a memory, holding it briefly in a fragile state, and then storing it again, sometimes altered. It means that every memory you hold has been touched by time, by perspective, by emotion, by forgetting. The architecture is never rigid. It is alive, shifting like a tapestry that breathes with the room around it. This fragility may feel unsettling. If memory can bend, if forgetting can intrude, then what of truth? What of identity? But consider another view. If memory were perfect, unbending, unyielding, you would be trapped within it. Every sorrow would remain sharp, every mistake carved forever, every detail preserved whether you wished it or not. Fragility here is a mercy. It allows you to soften what hurts, to reframe what you have lived, to release what no longer serves you. And so forgetting enters again as the quiet partner. Without forgetting, memory would be nothing but an unbearable accumulation. Without memory's fragility, you would not adapt, not change, not grow. The architecture is delicate, yes, but delicacy can be strong. A spider's web, after all, can bend with the wind, can hold, despite its thinness, can shimmer in light though it appears almost invisible. The web of your memories is the same. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine your own tapestry of memory. Threads of childhood, bright and blurred. Threads of love, vivid and warm. Threads of pain, dark but fading at the edges. Between them all, spaces where countless threads never held. That is forgetting. That is the architecture's openness, its refusal to become crowded. Each gap is not emptiness, but possibility. The room needed for your life to go on weaving new designs. So when you wonder why you forget so much of each day, consider that this is not a defect. It is the loom protecting itself. It is the fragile structure of memory guarding its beauty, ensuring that the whole remains coherent even as individual threads fade. The architecture is delicate because it must be. The tapestry survives because it breathes. And the very act of forgetting is what makes the pattern possible. But if memory is a tapestry, constantly woven and unwoven, what hand does the pruning? What presence tends the loom, keeping it from being strangled by excess thread? If forgetting is not random but necessary, then who or what performs the careful work of selection? If memory is a tapestry, then its threads are spun by the neurons themselves, each one a living filament reaching across the brain's expanse. Imagine a forest of countless trees, branches tangled, roots entwined, every surface alive with hidden signals. That forest is inside you. Within it, neurons stretch their arms, sending signals in flashes of electricity, whispering to one another through the chemistry of synapses. It is dense, it is vast, and it is endlessly alive. But like every forest, it must be tended, pruned, cared for, or else it becomes too tangled to breathe. The brain is not just neurons. Around and between them, a quieter community thrives, often overlooked yet essential. These are the glial cells, the silent gardeners of your mind. For many years, science dismissed them as mere support, scaffolding for the real work of the neurons. But that view has changed. We now know that glial cells are caretakers, cleaners, sculptors. They guide the growth of neural pathways, they remove debris, and they prune connections that are no longer needed. Their work is subtle, almost invisible, but without them the forest of your mind would grow wild, suffocating itself in unchecked branches. Picture this inner garden at dusk. The neurons stand like trees, their branches heavy with the day's growth. Tiny new connections have sprouted everywhere, fragile shoots of memory, sparked by passing thoughts and fleeting impressions. The glial cells move quietly among them, like gardeners with delicate hands. They do not tear recklessly, they trim with intention. A pathway unused is gently dismantled. A branch that grew too wild is pared back. What remains is not less but healthier, more navigable, more alive. This is forgetting reframed. Not a loss, not decay, but an act of care. Each day, your brain produces a storm of new synaptic connections. Each night, it must decide which to keep, which to strengthen, and which to let dissolve. If everything endured, your forest would become so thick that nothing could move through it. You would be lost in the density, unable to find a path, unable to see the light between the branches. Forgetting is the gardener's way of ensuring that the forest remains passable, beautiful, and fertile ground for tomorrow's growth. At the molecular level, this pruning is guided by patterns of activity. Neurons that fire together frequently are strengthened, their connections reinforced like vines thickening around a trellis. Neurons that lie dormant, rarely called upon, are weakened until eventually the glial cells dismantle the structure entirely. This is sometimes called synaptic pruning, and it is one of the most essential acts of the developing brain. Infants are born with an overabundance of connections. As they grow, these are cut back, streamlined, shaped. The forest becomes less dense but more refined, more capable of precise thought, and the pruning never truly ends. Even in adulthood, the gardeners continue their work, trimming and shaping the pathways of your life. It is tempting to think of forgetting as absence, as a door locked or a thread cut away into nothing. But within this metaphor of the garden, it becomes something gentler. Forgetting is compost. The connections that fade return their energy to the whole, freeing resources for the growth that matters most. Just as leaves fall in autumn, nourishing the soil, forgotten memories enrich the living system of the mind. They are not wasted, they are transformed. Consider also the balance of light and shade in a real forest. Too many branches block the sunlight, stunting the growth of the plants below. Too much undergrowth can strangle the roots. The glial gardeners thin the canopy, clear the underbrush, and allow the forest to breathe. Forgetting, then, is a form of mercy, giving your inner landscape the chance to stay vibrant rather than suffocating under its own weight. You can sense the truth of this in your own experience. Think of a day when you felt overstimulated, bombarded by too many impressions. A city street with flashing signs, honking horns, fragments of conversation colliding in your ears. By evening, you are weary not just from the activity, but from the flood of memory pressing at your mind. Sleep comes and with it forgetting. By morning, the weight has lifted. The gardeners have been at work, pruning away the excess, leaving only the pathways you may need again. What felt unbearable becomes manageable. What felt crowded becomes clear. There is beauty in this cycle, a rhythm as natural as the seasons. Each day brings a storm of growth, a tangle of new shoots. Each night brings pruning, clearing, renewal. And in this balance the forest flourishes. To forget is not to be diminished, but to be tended, shaped, kept alive in harmony with your own needs. Still there is a shadow to this garden. What if the pruning falters? What if the gardeners withdraw? Without forgetting, the forest becomes a thicket, dense with every memory, every detail, every trace of every moment. There are those who live with such conditions, unable to release the burden of memory. Their lives are cluttered with endless recollection, a ceaseless noise of detail that will not soften. To remember too much is to live in a forest with no paths, only walls of growth pressing in on every side. This raises a question. If forgetting is care, then what happens when that care is absent? What happens when the gardeners fall silent and the mind cannot let go? There is a strange heaviness in the mind when forgetting fails to do its work. You may feel it at the end of a restless day when thoughts crowd against one another, unwilling to soften or slip away. The mind circles the same memory, the same worry, the same fragment of a conversation, and even as you lie down to rest, it refuses to release you. This is the weight of remembering too much. Not clarity, not wisdom, but a burden that keeps the mind from breathing. The human brain is not designed to hold everything. Each day, it is bombarded with an astonishing volume of impressions. Every word you read, every face you pass, every sound, every stray thought sparks activity in neurons, laying down faint traces of memory. Left unfiltered, these would pile upon one another endlessly, like papers scattered across the floor of a room until there is no place left to stand. Without forgetting, without pruning, you would be lost in an endless archive of triviality. In rare cases, there are people who cannot forget. They remember every day of their lives with startling precision, able to recall what they ate for breakfast 10 years ago, or what clothes they wore on a particular Wednesday in childhood.
At first glance, it seems like a gift.
But many who live with this ability describe it not as a blessing, but as a trap. Their minds are crowded with the relentless noise of the past, every detail equally loud, every moment pressing in. There is no room for relief, no space for the present. They are weighed down by their own memories, like travelers carrying 1,000 suitcases with no place to set them down. Even without such extraordinary conditions, you may have glimpsed this weight. Perhaps after a sleepless night when your brain refused to let go of the day's concerns. Perhaps after a trauma when memory burned too brightly to fade. Or perhaps after hours spent scrolling, absorbing, consuming without pause until your mind felt thick with fragments it could not arrange. These are the moments when forgetting falters, and you sense just how necessary it is. Neuroscience offers a picture of what is happening. Without the pruning of unused synapses, neural pathways become cluttered. Activity is no longer streamlined. Signals overlap, compete, and interfere with one another. It is like a road network so congested that no journey can move smoothly, every path blocked by traffic from every direction. Memory overload is not efficiency. It is confusion. The mind needs forgetting the way a city needs traffic lights, the way a library needs shelves, the way a forest needs clearing. Nature, too, shows us what happens when forgetting fails. A garden left untended becomes overgrown, choked by weeds, sunlight blocked, growth stunted. A river that never sheds its debris becomes stagnant, unable to flow. The living world depends on cycles of letting go, leaves falling, tides receding, petals withering, to create space for renewal. The brain is no different. Forgetting is its autumn, its ebb, its necessary surrender, and when it does not arrive, the consequences ripple outward. Insomnia is often the mind's struggle with unpruned memory. Thoughts replay, unresolved, refusing to dissolve into silence. The brain circles them as though they are too important to release, even when they are trivial. The result is restlessness, tension, exhaustion. Sleep, which should cleanse and reorder, becomes elusive. Without forgetting, the mind cannot descend into the deeper stages of restoration. There is also the emotional toll. To remember too vividly is to feel too vividly. A painful memory that should have softened with time can remain raw, intruding into the present with its sharp edges intact. Without forgetting, sorrow lingers, anxiety repeats, fear does not fade. The mind becomes heavy not just with information, but with emotion, carrying the past into every moment of the present. You might imagine your memory as a vast hall filled with voices. When forgetting works, some voices grow quieter, fading into the background, allowing a few clear ones to be heard. But when forgetting falters, all the voices shout at once. The hall becomes unbearable, a place of confusion rather than clarity. And yet it is in this weight that we begin to see the grace of forgetting more clearly. For if the failure to forget clutters, burdens, and exhausts, then the act of forgetting itself must be a release. To forget is to silence the unnecessary voices, to close drawers that need not remain open, to allow the hall to return to stillness. Forgetting is not the enemy of memory, but the means by which memory remains usable, by which life remains livable. This realization is quietly comforting. You do not need to carry every detail. You do not need to hold on to every word, every glance, every fear. The mind was not built for such endless weight, and it has its own ways of releasing you. Forgetting may sometimes feel like betrayal, like weakness, like something slipping beyond your grasp. But when you see what happens without it, you understand that it is an act of mercy. It is the brain caring for itself and for you. Even in those restless nights when forgetting seems absent, know that the process is still at work beneath the surface. The gardeners of the brain have not truly abandoned you. They move slowly, sometimes imperceptibly, but always toward balance. With patience, with rest, the mind finds its way back to clearing, to pruning, to quieting its own weight. And so as we leave this heaviness behind, we can turn to a softer image. Not the burden of remembering too much, but the relief of forgetting just enough. Not the crowded hall of endless voices, but a library tended by a quiet keeper. Imagine that library, vast and silent, its shelves lit by the glow of lamplight. Books are placed with care, dust is swept away, and volumes no longer needed are gently returned to the void. In this image lies the truth of forgetting at night. Not destruction, but curation. Not chaos, but order. When night gathers and your eyes grow heavy, something remarkable begins in the silence of your brain. The forest of neurons, busy and tangled all day, quiets itself, and within that hush, another image comes alive, a library hidden in the shadows of your skull, endless shelves stretching into dim lamplight. Sleep enters not only as rest, but as a librarian, careful and calm, who moves through the aisles with quiet precision. The day's memories arrive like stacks of books, piled carelessly on the floor, some opened, some dog-eared, some filled with nonsense scribbles, others containing stories worth keeping. If left where they fell, the library would become a chaos of clutter. But as you drift into deeper sleep, the librarian sets to work. Books are reshelved in the proper places. Pages are smoothed and repaired. Some are copied and filed in multiple sections, cross-referenced, made easier to find again.
Others are judged unworthy of keeping, quietly returned to the void.
Their shelves left open for future arrivals. This is what forgetting feels like, beneath the metaphor. During sleep, especially in the slow wave stages, the brain strengthens certain synaptic pathways while allowing others to weaken. Important connections are consolidated, rehearsed, replayed in bursts of coordinated activity. At the same time, weaker, irrelevant traces are pared back. What remains is not the noise of every impression, but the curated story of what might matter to you tomorrow. Consider the librarian's judgment. It is not random. A memory tied to strong emotion, to learning, to repetition, is more likely to be chosen for preservation.
A stray detail, a passing blur, a fragment without meaning is more likely to be let go.
The librarian is not cruel, but discerning. Without this discernment, your shelves would overflow until the library was unusable. By letting some stories vanish, the librarian makes the rest legible. Dreams may be the whispers of this process. Fragments of pages being flipped, passages being copied, stories being tested before they are filed or forgotten. You wake with scattered images because the librarian has not paused the work to tell you the tale.
You are glimpsing the shuffle from one shelf to another, the quiet rhythm of preservation and release, and in this work lies the paradox. You sleep to remember, and you sleep to forget.
The two cannot be separated. To hold on, you must also let go. The librarian cannot keep every book, cannot preserve every page, or else the library would collapse under its own weight. Forgetting here is not erasure, but curation. Not neglect, but wisdom. Imagine yourself walking through such a library at dawn as the first light filters in. The shelves are neat, the clutter cleared, the books that matter waiting for you. You would not mourn the volumes that vanished overnight, because their absence gives clarity to what remains. In the same way, when you wake from sleep, you carry not the entirety of yesterday, but the distilled version, refined, pruned, shaped by the librarian's quiet care. This rhythm is ancient. Across all animals that sleep, versions of this librarian can be found. Birds replay their songs in neural echoes as they rest, reinforcing the notes that matter, letting go of false starts. Rodents rehearse mazes in the patterns of their hippocampus, strengthening the paths they will need again, discarding the ones they will not. Even fruit flies, simple as they are, show evidence of memory consolidation during rest. The librarian is universal, a figure moving silently through the shelves of countless species, preserving life by managing memory. For humans, this curatorial work becomes the foundation of learning, creativity, and emotional balance. Without it, information blurs, emotions remain raw, and clarity dissolves. A night without the librarian's care leaves the library disordered, the shelves overflowing, the books scattered on the floor. You feel it as fog, as heaviness, as the sense that nothing fits neatly into place. A night with the librarian's full attention, by contrast, leaves you lighter, clearer, more able to learn anew. And so the next time you forget a trivial detail, the name of a stranger you will never meet again, the exact sequence of a phone number you used only once, you might smile instead of frown. The librarian has done you a kindness, returning a book you never needed, keeping your shelves free for what matters more. To forget is to trust the wisdom of the night. The metaphor grows richer still when we imagine what happens not only to books preserved or discarded, but to those recycled. The librarian sometimes takes pages from one story and binds them into another. Connections form between seemingly unrelated memories, leading to insights, creativity, new understanding. In the act of reorganizing the library, new books appear, stitched together from fragments of others. Forgetting, then, is not only subtraction but transformation. What you lose may nourish what you gain, the way the scraps of paper can be pulped into the fibers of something fresh. There is comfort in picturing this work as quiet and kind. The librarian moves softly, making no sound but the sliding of a book across wood, the faint shuffle of pages, the gentle exhale of dust into air. While you rest, your mind is tended by this silent figure, working without complaint, asking nothing in return. The order you find in the morning is a gift you did not see being prepared, but this image, vivid as it is still incomplete. For beyond the reordering of books, another process is unfolding in the depths of sleep. The librarian is not only reshelving volumes, but preparing the library itself for another day.
As you sink deeper, a tide begins to flow through the brain, washing between the shelves, carrying away debris, cleansing the space so that new stories can be received.
If the librarian preserves meaning, the tide preserves the very structure of the library. And so the question arises, what is this tide that moves through us at night? What hidden waters flow through the corridors of the mind, clearing away what the day has left behind? Deep within the quiet of night, when sleep has folded you into its stillness, a tide begins to move in secret. Not a tide of oceans nor of rivers, but a tide within your own skull, flowing silently among the branches of neurons. It is called the glymphatic system, and its waters are not metaphorical alone. Cerebrospinal fluid, clear and luminous, pulses through the brain's channels, washing away the debris of thought, the byproducts of waking life. The residue of the day, imagine it as moonlight turned liquid, slipping gently between the shelves of your inner library, flowing beneath the canopy of your forest of neurons. Each surge carries with it what no longer belongs. Fragments of proteins, traces of exhaustion, the microscopic clutter of cells that have worked too long. During the day, these remnants build up, clouding the mind, slowing the pathways, dulling the sharpness of thought. But when sleep descends, the tide comes, rushing in, sweeping the corridors, clearing the passages, giving the brain a chance to breathe again. It is an astonishing rhythm. While you rest in stillness, your brain becomes more active in cleansing than at any waking hour. The cells themselves shrink slightly, opening space between them, widening the channels so that fluid can surge through. It is as if the library expands its aisles for the night, giving the janitors room to move, the dust to be carried away. The result is renewal. The architecture of thought polished and restored by the waters of forgetting. Forgetting here is not only the pruning of synapses, not only the curation of memory. It is also this washing away, this literal cleansing of what no longer serves. Proteins linked to degenerative disease, toxins that accumulate through the activity of neurons, all are swept along in this tide. To sleep, to forget, is to cleanse at the deepest level, to protect the very future of your mind. Without this tide, the waters stagnate, the debris builds, and clarity dims. With it, the brain awakens refreshed, the forest bright, the library in order. Picture yourself lying near a shore as the tide flows in and out. The sand shifts, shells are lifted and carried away, the beach smooths itself with every pulse. This is happening within you each night, unseen but essential. Your neurons are the shore, your cerebrospinal fluid the sea. Forgetting is not only silence but washing, not only absence but renewal. There is a poetry in how the brain entrusts this cleansing to sleep. Only when consciousness recedes, when you surrender the grip of control, can the tide perform its work. You cannot command it, cannot will it into motion while awake. It waits for the surrender of sleep, for the softening of awareness to open its channels. To forget then requires trust, the trust of letting go, of handing yourself over to processes older and wiser than your conscious will. Scientists describe the glymphatic tide in terms of circulation, of solutes, an interstitial space, of astrocytes guiding the flow. Yet for us, lying in the quiet dark, it is enough to imagine it as a cleansing river, moving without sound through the forest of our neurons. It brushes past memories no longer needed, loosens the grip of details too trivial to keep, carries away the burdens we cannot afford to hold forever.
It does not ask our permission.
It moves because it must, because life itself requires a rhythm of holding and releasing, of gathering and dissolving. And if you listen inward, you may sense the comfort of this truth. The worries that cling too tightly, the mistakes that replay, the noise of a day that felt endless. All of it is given to the tide. Perhaps not entirely, not all at once, but enough to make room for breath, enough to let morning arrive with lightness. Forgetting is the current that sweeps the clutter from your shores, making space for what endures. In this way, the glymphatic tide is not only a physical system, but a metaphor for life itself. We too must learn to let go, to release the fragments that weigh us down. Just as the tide clears the brain, forgetting clears the soul, washing away the unnecessary so that the essential may shine through. The ocean does not mourn the waves that retreat. It trusts that new ones will come. Your mind does the same, trusting that what is carried away at night makes room for what tomorrow will bring. Consider also the fragility of the process. When sleep is cut short, when rest is shallow, the tide cannot do its full work. The debris remains, the mind feels foggy, the body heavy. This is why sleep deprivation feels not only exhausting, but unclean, as though the corridors of thought are cluttered with yesterday's remnants. It is not only fatigue, but the absence of cleansing, the absence of forgetting. To lose sleep is to deny the tide, to deny yourself the renewal that only surrender can bring. And so every night you give yourself back to this cycle. The librarian reshelves your books, the gardeners prune your forest. The tide washes your shores. Each image describes the same truth. Forgetting is not the erasure of who you are, but the maintenance of who you can be. Without it, the mind collapses beneath its own weight. With it, you awaken to clarity, to freshness, to the possibility of another day. As you imagine this tide flowing now, perhaps as you listen, let it soothe you. Picture the waves carrying away what you no longer need, dissolving the noise, the debris, the heaviness of the day. Feel the trust of surrendering to something larger than yourself, something ancient and necessary. Let the rhythm of forgetting be like the rhythm of the sea, constant, cleansing, and kind. And yet, within this ocean of forgetting, something else stirs.
Not everything is swept away.
Some fragments remain, weaving themselves into stories of the night. They are not debris, not clutter, but strange rehearsals, half-formed plays stitched together from memory and imagination. When morning comes, many of them will dissolve, vanishing as though they were never there.
And yet their fleeting presence is vital.
They are dreams, the theatre of letting go. When the tide of sleep has carried you deeper, when the librarian has reshelved your books and the gardeners have trimmed the forest, another theatre opens in silence. Its stage is vast and unbounded, its actors pulled from fragments of memory, its scripts written and erased at the same time. This is the dream world, the theatre of letting go, where forgetting wears its most imaginative mask. Dreams are strange because they are stitched from what seems familiar, yet rearranged into unfamiliar shapes. A face you know appears in a place you've never been. A moment from childhood is woven into the present. Rules of waking life dissolve, gravity weakens, time bends, boundaries blur. It is as if the brain, having been freed from the strict logic of daytime, takes its fragments of memory and begins to play, testing, rehearsing, exploring. Why this theatre exists has been asked for centuries. Ancient cultures saw dreams as messages from gods, as visions of the future, as journeys of the soul. Modern science sees them as rehearsals, simulations the brain runs in order to process emotions, to test survival strategies, to knit memories together in strange ways. And yet, perhaps both views touch the truth. Dreams are both biological and mysterious, both pragmatic and poetic. They are rehearsals of life and glimpses of imagination, and by morning they often dissolve into the waters of forgetting. Think of how quickly most dreams vanish. You wake with images still clinging to you, a hallway, a voice, a fragment of dialogue, and then within minutes they are gone, slipping through your grasp like mist through fingers. At first this may feel like loss, as though you have been given a story only to have it torn away. But forgetting here is part of the dream's nature. The rehearsal was meant to be fleeting, not permanent. Like an actor who improvises on stage and bows before disappearing, the dream plays its role and then dissolves. This transience is not weakness, but function. If every dream remained sharp, if every nocturnal play pressed itself into memory, you would awaken each morning overwhelmed with cluttered narratives. You would carry hundreds of half-formed stories into your day, distracting you, confusing you, drowning the clarity of waking memory. Forgetting clears the stage at dawn, leaving only what matters. Sometimes a lingering feeling, sometimes an image that clings, sometimes nothing at all. The forgetting is as important as the dreaming itself. And yet, even if the stories dissolve, the work of the dream remains. A nightmare may vanish by morning, but the fear it rehearsed may have prepared your brain to face a future threat. A joyful dream may fade, but the softened emotional tone can carry into your day. The fragments you do not remember still leave traces like footprints in sand smoothed by the tide. Forgetting removes the detail, but the imprint of the rehearsal remains in the architecture of your emotions, your memory, your readiness for life. Consider also the creativity of the dream state. Artists, scientists, and thinkers have long drawn inspiration from their dreams.
A melody, a solution to a problem, a vision for a painting, these sometimes emerge from the theatre of night.
Yet even here, forgetting plays its part. For every remembered spark, countless others vanish unneeded, perhaps too chaotic to serve the waking mind. Forgetting trims the excess, leaving only the rare gem that can shine in daylight. You might imagine your dreaming brain as a troupe of players improvising endlessly in the dark. They take props from the shelves of memory, a voice, a smell, a childhood room, and weave them into scenes that make little sense to the rational mind. They perform, they dissolve, they perform again. And when morning comes, the curtain falls, the stage is swept clean, the troupe vanishes. Forgetting ensures that you are not forced to carry the entire performance with you, only the subtle lessons it left behind. Science has begun to map some of these processes. REM sleep, the stage most closely tied to vivid dreaming, shows bursts of neural activity resembling waking thought. The amygdala linked to emotion is highly active. The prefrontal cortex, seat of rational control, is quieter. This imbalance may explain the wildness of dream logic, emotions vivid, reasoning subdued. But even as science names the circuits, the experience remains ineffable. A dream is not only neurons firing, it is also poetry the brain writes in the dark and then erases with the dawn. And perhaps this erasure itself is an act of mercy. For what would it mean to carry every dream with you?
Hundreds each year, thousands across a lifetime. Stories bizarre, terrifying, nonsensical.
The weight would be unbearable. Forgetting lets you rise each morning with clarity, with focus, with space for the waking world. It frees you from the endless backlog of rehearsals, leaving the stage clear for the next night's play. And so, as you drift into sleep, you enter not only rest, but theatre. You give yourself to performances that will not be remembered, to stories that vanish almost as soon as they are written. This vanishing is not failure, but gift. It allows your mind to experiment without consequence, to feel without burden, to create without demand. Dreams are the art of the subconscious, and forgetting is the applause that closes the curtain, clearing the stage for the next act. Still, as you reflect on this nightly theatre, you may feel the question stir. What, precisely, is happening in these moments of forgetting? How does the brain decide which threads to keep and which to let slip away? What are the laws of this hidden editing, the science of forgetting itself? Forgetting is not a single act, not one door closing, not one thread being cut. It is a constellation of processes, a choreography of mechanisms working together in silence. When you forget, you are not experiencing absence alone. You are experiencing biology at its most intricate, sculpting the architecture of your mind. To understand this, science has given us several ways of seeing, theories of pruning, interference, and consolidation. Each is a window into the hidden art of forgetting, each a reminder that to let go is as much an achievement as to hold on. Begin with synaptic pruning, the gardener's metaphor written into the brain itself. Imagine your neurons as a dense thicket of branches, each synapse a twig reaching toward another. In childhood, the thicket is wild, overgrown, bursting with excess. Every sound, every word, every glance sparks new growth. But such abundance cannot last. To think clearly, to act efficiently, the thicket must be thinned. Synaptic pruning removes what is weak or unused, trimming back the excess so that the remaining branches can grow strong. It is forgetting as refinement, as shaping, as the careful removal that makes the structure whole. Without pruning, your mind would remain tangled, unable to find its way through its own forest. Forgetting here is not decay, but design. Next comes the principle of interference. If pruning is the sculptor, interference is the crowd. Memory is not an isolated system, each thought locked away in its own safe. Memories overlap, share pathways, jostle for space. To recall one is to risk disrupting another, to strengthen one is to weaken its neighbors. The brain is like a loom weaving multiple threads at once, and sometimes the threads tangle. This tangle is interference. A name slips because another presses against it.
A detail is lost because a fresher one overlays it.
Interference is forgetting not through removal, but through competition, the crowding of voices where only some can be heard. And though it feels like failure, it is part of the design. To keep what matters most, other fragments must yield. Consolidation, meanwhile, shows forgetting in yet another light. When you learn something new, the memory is fragile, like wet clay not yet hardened. With time and sleep, the clay is fired, the memory strengthened. But not all clay makes it to the kiln. Some remains soft, crumbles, and is lost. Consolidation is selective. The memories rehearsed, emotionally charged, or meaningful are strengthened. The rest dissolve back into silence. This, too, is forgetting. Not erasure, but neglect. The quiet decision not to preserve what was never meant to endure. Like a writer revising a manuscript, the brain decides which passages to copy into permanence and which to leave behind. The forgotten words are not waste, but part of the editing that gives clarity to the final draft. Together, these processes reveal forgetting as multifaceted: pruning, crowding, neglect, editing. Each mechanism is distinct, yet they all serve the same purpose: to keep the brain from drowning in its own abundance. It is tempting to see memory as treasure, forgetting as theft. But science shows us the opposite. Without forgetting, memory itself becomes useless, a hoard too vast to navigate. Forgetting is the mapmaker, the sculptor, the editor, the tide that makes memory navigable. Consider again the metaphor of sculpture. A block of marble contains infinite shapes, but only through chisel and removal does a figure emerge. Forgetting is the chisel striking away what obscures the form. The sculpture of your mind, the identity you inhabit, is defined not only by what you remember, but by what you have forgotten. Each erasure is a stroke that brings clarity, that reveals shape, that makes the whole coherent. Without those absences, the figure would remain buried in stone. Or consider the metaphor of weaving. A tapestry is not only the threads that are present, but the spaces between them. If every possible thread were crammed into the loom, the fabric would be dense, opaque, unreadable. It is forgetting that allows the pattern to appear, forgetting that creates the openness through which meaning can be seen. Memory is the cloth, forgetting the spaces that give it breath. Even interference, which feels so frustrating when a word will not come, can be seen in this way. Imagine a choir where every singer insists on being heard at once. The song collapses into noise. Forgetting is the conductor lowering some voices so that others may carry the melody. What feels like failure is in truth the preservation of harmony, and consolidation, selective as it is, mirrors the act of storytelling. Each day your mind writes thousands of lines.
At night it edits.
Some lines are kept, some discarded, some woven into new chapters. You wake not with the raw transcript, but with the refined narrative. The forgotten lines were necessary, for without them the story would sprawl endlessly, unreadable. Forgetting makes memory into story rather than chaos. This science does not diminish the mystery, it deepens it. Knowing that your memories are sculpted, crowded, pruned, and edited does not make them less wondrous. It reveals the quiet intelligence of your own biology, the artistry of forgetting woven into your cells. Each lapse, each fade, each absence is part of a design that keeps you whole. And yet, as you absorb these processes, another truth begins to emerge. Forgetting is not merely a matter of clarity, it is also a matter of survival. To remember too much is not only inconvenient but dangerous. Minds weighed down by excess cannot adapt, cannot move with the present, cannot escape the noise of their own past. Evolution has given us forgetting not only as editor, but as guardian, ensuring that we are not crushed beneath memory's weight. What, then, does it mean to forget in order to live? What does it mean that your very survival depends not on what you keep, but on what you let slip away? To forget is not only to clear space, not only to prune and to edit. It is to survive. Memory may be precious, but too much of it is perilous. If you carried every detail of every moment, if nothing ever faded, you would drown beneath the weight of your own life. Forgetting is not simply a cognitive process. It is an evolutionary adaptation, a hidden strategy that has allowed us to endure. Picture the earliest humans moving through shifting landscapes, surrounded by constant change. For them, remembering everything would have been no advantage. The mind needed to filter, to focus on what mattered, the path to water, the signs of danger, the faces of kin. To retain every leaf, every stone, every minor sound would have clogged awareness, slowing reaction, dimming clarity. Those who forgot enough to focus on survival, those whose minds could release the noise, were those who thrived. Forgetting was not weakness. It was efficiency, a narrowing of the lens so that life itself could be sustained. Even now you can sense this truth. Imagine walking down a busy street and holding on to every detail, the number of cracks in the sidewalk, the shifting of every leaf, the faces of every passerby. To carry them all with equal weight would be unbearable. Instead, your mind selects. It keeps what matters in the moment and allows the rest to dissolve.
This is not failure.
It is the very thing that lets you move forward. There are rare individuals who cannot forget. They live with what scientists call hyperthymesia, an overwhelming recall of every day of their lives.
At first, it seems like a gift, a superpower of memory.
But those who live with it often describe it as suffocating. Their days are crowded with the noise of their own history. They cannot escape the trivial, cannot let go of the pain, cannot find relief in the mercy of forgetting. Life becomes an archive with no doors, every detail equally loud, every memory equally present. Survival for them becomes not clarity but constant burden. Their minds show us what happens when forgetting fails, and why it is essential to let things go. Animals, too, rely on forgetting for survival. A bird rehearses its song until the right notes endure. The wrong ones are forgotten. A predator must forget failed hunts so that it does not freeze, paralyzed by memory of past failure. Even plants in their way show cycles of remembering and releasing, keeping patterns that matter, discarding those that waste energy. Forgetting is not limited to humans. It is a universal strategy of life, a way of focusing energy where it belongs. In evolutionary terms, memory is costly. It requires energy, resources, neural space. To store everything would be to squander the body's finite energy on noise. Forgetting is conservation. It is the trimming of excess so that the vital can remain. To forget is to live within your limits, to focus on the essentials, to give yourself room to act. Survival has never been about knowing everything. It has always been about knowing enough. You may feel this deeply in moments of change. When you step into a new chapter of life, a new place, a new role, a new self, forgetting becomes part of your transformation. Old patterns fade, not because they were never real, but because they are no longer useful. To survive is to let go of what once served and no longer does. Forgetting is adaptation made visible in the mind, and yet forgetting as survival is not only about efficiency.
It is also about mercy.
To survive is not only to navigate the present, but to endure the weight of the past. If every sorrow stayed sharp, if every wound remained raw, life would be unbearable. Forgetting softens, blurs, heals. It is not indifference but kindness, the evolutionary recognition that to move forward you must not be pierced forever by what lies behind. Without this mercy, survival would be too heavy to bear. This truth becomes clearer when you think of sleep. In the night, your brain rehearses, consolidates, prunes, keeps what matters for tomorrow, and it releases what no longer serves. It is survival in its quietest form. Without sleep, without forgetting, even the simplest tasks crumble. The brain falters, the body weakens, life itself becomes unsustainable. Forgetting in sleep is not optional. It is the hidden work that allows you to endure another day. So when you feel memory slipping, when a detail vanishes, when a moment fades, pause before you call it failure. Maybe your survival at work. The mind is always choosing, always releasing, always ensuring that you do not drown in excess. Forgetting is life's way of keeping you light enough to continue, and yet, within this survival, another layer reveals itself. Forgetting does not only protect your focus and lighten your burdens, it also shields your heart. For what is survival without the ability to endure the storms of emotion? How would you continue if every grief stayed sharp, if every fear repeated endlessly, if every pain remained unsoftened? Perhaps forgetting is not only a cognitive adaptation, but also an emotional one. Perhaps its deepest gift is the ability to cleanse the heart, to blur the sharpness of sorrow, to let the amygdala rest. Perhaps forgetting is not only survival in the wild, but survival within yourself. There are memories that do not wound, and there are memories that cut deep. Some fade quickly, softened by the blur of time. Others return with sharp edges, uninvited, flashing across your mind when you least expect them. Painful memories carry a weight unlike ordinary recollections. They can shape the rhythm of your heartbeat, tighten the muscles in your chest, leave you restless long after the moment has passed. If memory is the architecture of the self, then forgetting is the gentle erosion that smooths its roughest stones. It is not betrayal. It is mercy. When you sleep, this mercy becomes visible in the brain's nightly patterns. The amygdala, that small almond-shaped structure buried deep within, is the sentinel of emotion. By day it alerts you, stirs you, keeps you vigilant to fear and threat. But at night, in sleep, the amygdala quiets. Its storms soften, its fire cools. The mind rehearses emotions in dreams, replaying them in safer, distorted settings, as if fear itself were being placed on a stage where it could be acted out without consequence. In this theatre, the sharpness dulls. By morning, the memory remains, but its sting has lessened. Forgetting here is not loss, but transformation. Think of a scar upon the skin. In the beginning, the wound is raw, red, tender. Over time, the tissue rebuilds. The scar never fully disappears, but it no longer bleeds, no longer aches with every touch. Forgetting acts upon emotional memory in a similar way. The event remains, but the intensity softens. The brain, through sleep and time, weaves new tissue around the wound of memory until it becomes less piercing. This is the emotional cleanse, the mercy of forgetting that allows you to carry pain without being endlessly cut by it. Dreams are central to this cleansing. In their surreal distortions, they reframe the memory. A face of someone you feared may appear in a dream, but blurred, misplaced, merged with something trivial. A terrifying scene may replay, but out of sequence with impossible shifts. In these dream rehearsals, the memory is stripped of its rigid context, diluted until it can be refiled with less power. The dream does not erase the past. It alters the emotional weight you give it, washing away the intensity that once overwhelmed you. This is why sleepless nights are so often filled with rumination, the mind circling endlessly around what hurts. Without sleep, the emotional cleanse falters. The amygdala stays raw, firing too easily, refusing to rest. Trauma survivors often describe sleeplessness not just as exhaustion, but as imprisonment within their own memories. The cycle of forgetting has been disrupted, the mercy withheld. To restore the rhythm of sleep is to return the possibility of release, to allow forgetting to soften what memory alone cannot bear. Science describes this process in terms of neural activity, of REM cycles and the shifting balance between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. But to live it is to feel the difference between nights when you awaken still burning with sorrow and nights when you rise with the wound less sharp. The mercy is not always immediate, not always complete, but over time, forgetting works in increments. Each night, a little more sting dissolves, a little more weight is lifted, a little more room is made for peace. You have felt this in your own life. A heartbreak that once consumed you eventually softened. A humiliation that once left you flushed eventually lost its hold. A grief that seemed endless gradually turned from raw pain into quiet memory. This was not the result of willpower alone. It was forgetting at work, the brain's silent labor, the softening of sharp edges, the mercy that allows you to live forward without being trapped backward. And yet forgetting does not mean complete erasure. Some memories resist dissolution. They remain, but transformed, woven into the story of who you are. The death of a loved one, the fracture of trust, the trauma that leaves its mark. These may never vanish. But even here, forgetting alters their texture. The memory remains present, but the emotional fire dims. You can touch the scar without it breaking open. The mercy is not that the past disappears, but that it no longer cuts you with the same ferocity. There is a deep wisdom in this. Life would be unbearable if forgetting did not temper memory. Imagine carrying every sorrow at full intensity, every loss as fresh as the day it happened. To survive, you must allow forgetting to work upon you. It does not diminish your love, your grief, your truth. It gives you the strength to carry them without being consumed. This is why forgetting is not cruelty, but kindness. The mind does not abandon you when it lets memories fade.
It protects you.
It allows you to honor the past while living in the present. It teaches you that pain can be endured, not by holding it forever sharp, but by letting its edges soften until it becomes part of you without breaking you. And so, forgetting is not simply a cognitive process of trimming and editing. It is an emotional cleanse, a hidden mercy that allows you to rise again each day with less weight than the day before. It is the gift that lets you smile after sorrow, love after heartbreak, trust after betrayal. Without it, pain would be endless. With it, renewal becomes possible. Yet in this mercy lies a deeper truth. Forgetting does not only cleanse emotion, it reveals the impermanence of all things.
Memories fade not only because they hurt, but because they must make room for the new.
If every moment endured unchanged, your life would become a museum, frozen, unchanging, heavy with the past. Forgetting ensures that time moves, that moments dissolve, that space opens for what comes next. It is not only emotional mercy, but existential necessity. And so you may wonder, if forgetting makes room for the new, then what is the meaning of this impermanence? Is forgetting not just a mercy, but also a hidden poetry? The quiet rhythm by which life remains alive. There is a quiet truth that shadows every memory. All things fade.
A laugh once sharp in your ear now echoes faintly.
A face once vivid in your mind now softens at the edges. Even the brightest experiences dissolve with time, leaving behind not the full moment, but a trace, a feeling, a fragment of what once was whole. At first, this fading can feel like a theft. Why should the most beautiful or meaningful dissolve? Yet, in another light, forgetting is not theft, but gift. The gift of impermanence, the hidden poetry of life that allows every moment to matter because it cannot last. When you watch a candle burn, you do not curse the flame for ending. Its beauty lies in its flicker, its glow against the dark, its fragility. The memory of it lingers, softened, incomplete.
The impermanence is what makes it luminous.
So it is with your life. If every experience were preserved whole, untouched by time, then no single moment would shine brighter than another. The very fading, the very letting go is what allows the new to arrive, what gives shape to the passage of time. Think of the seasons. Spring's blossoms are breathtaking not because they last, but because they don't. Their petals remind you that beauty is tied to brevity.
Autumn's leaves fall in colors of fire, and their fall is their glory.
Winter quiets the earth, but only so spring can bloom again. The rhythm of forgetting is woven into the world, not as cruelty, but as renewal. Your mind, too, follows this rhythm. It lets memories fade, not to betray you, but to open space for what is next. If you remembered everything, life would become static. You would walk through days already full, no room for freshness, no space for discovery. The gift of impermanence is the gift of becoming, that you are not finished, that you can always be changed, that forgetting makes room for growth. Memory holds your story, but forgetting keeps the story moving. Without forgetting, there is no future, only repetition of what already has been. Impermanence can feel frightening because it confronts you with loss. Loved ones pass, faces blur, the days slip quickly. Yet within this very fragility is the secret that makes life meaningful. A moment matters precisely because it will not come again. A word spoken, a glance shared, a breath taken beneath a sky streaked with stars. They shimmer in their vanishing. To forget is to honor the rhythm of this vanishing, to let go so that you may fully live what remains. Philosophers have long wrestled with this paradox. To cling is to suffer, yet to let go is to feel the flow of life itself. The poet writes of the river that never stays the same, the mystic of the breath that comes and goes, the thinker of the self that changes moment by moment. Forgetting is part of this current, the gentle release that carries you forward. Impermanence is not enemy but teacher, showing you that to live is not to hold, but to flow. Even in love, forgetting is woven quietly. The first intensity of passion fades, not because it was false, but because the mind cannot remain forever in its fire. What remains, softened, transformed, is a gentler memory that allows the love itself to endure in a new form. In grief too, forgetting brings mercy. The sharpness fades, leaving not erasure but a softer presence, an ache transformed into remembrance. Forgetting does not erase love or loss. It lets them shift into forms you can live with. You may fear that forgetting diminishes the value of what you hold dear. But consider this. Is not the cherry blossom more treasured because it falls? Is not the song more powerful because it ends? Your memories too are precious because they change, because they fade, because they remind you that time is always moving. If everything were permanent, beauty would lose its urgency, love its fire, life its wonder. Forgetting is the hidden hand that keeps wonder alive, and so forgetting becomes a kind of poetry, not written in words, but in absence. The pauses between notes make the music. The spaces between stars make the night sky. The fading of memory makes each moment sing. Forgetting is not the silence that kills meaning, but the silence that gives it depth. To forget is to live inside a poem where every line matters because it will never be written again. Even your own self is impermanent. Who you were yesterday is not who you are today, and who you are now will not remain tomorrow. This transformation is made possible by forgetting. Old habits dissolve, old selves fall away, old versions of you soften into memory. Without this, you would be trapped, unable to grow. Forgetting is the doorway to change, the mercy that frees you from being only what you once were. Perhaps this is the hidden truth. Impermanence is not against you. It is for you. It is what makes you alive, what gives your days their glow, what allows you to change, to heal, to grow. Forgetting is simply the mind's way of enacting this universal rhythm. It is the poetry of time written into your very cells. And when you look up at the night sky, you see impermanence reflected on the grandest scale. Stars flare and fade, galaxies drift apart. Even the universe itself is a story of change and forgetting. What you experience in your own memory is not isolated, but part of this cosmic rhythm. To forget is to echo the stars, to participate in the vast impermanence of all things. So the next time you feel memory slipping away, let yourself wonder, is this loss or is this gift? Is this fading or is this space being made for what is yet to come? In the poetry of impermanence, the answer is always both. When you gaze upward into the night sky, you are not only looking at light, you are looking at memory. Every star that glimmers has sent its brightness across space for years, centuries, sometimes millennia. What you see now is a record of what once was. And yet, as you marvel, you are also witnessing forgetting. For even stars burn out, even galaxies fade. Even the universe carries within it the rhythm of impermanence. Forgetting is not merely a quirk of the human mind. It is a principle written into the fabric of existence itself. Consider the stars. Each one burns through its fuel, shining brilliantly for millions or billions of years. But the brilliance is temporary. A star exhausts its supply, collapses, or explodes, leaving behind a remnant, a white dwarf, a neutron star, a black hole. The original star, in its fullness, is gone. The memory of its light may still travel across space, still reach your eyes, but the star itself has been forgotten by the cosmos, returned to silence. Forgetting here is not tragedy but transformation, the universe sculpting itself into new forms. Galaxies, too, bear this impermanence. They collide, merge, unravel. Spirals stretch into ellipses, clusters scatter into the void. The grand architecture you see through a telescope is not fixed, but fleeting, caught in the act of becoming something else. The universe does not keep its structures unchanged. It allows them to shift, to fade, to dissolve. In this way, forgetting is cosmic evolution, the space through which the new can emerge. Even time itself forgets. The farther we move into the future, the less of the past remains intact. Radiation from the Big Bang still hums faintly across the cosmos, but it is stretched thin, cooled, almost erased. The early fire of creation is now only a whisper. If the universe had perfect memory, every instant would remain as it was, and there would be no unfolding, no movement forward. Forgetting allows the universe to change, to expand, to carry life within its arms. In this cosmic mirror, your own forgetting becomes less frightening. Just as stars fade, so too do your memories. Just as galaxies dissolve, so too do your moments slip into silence. You are not broken when you forget. You are echoing the rhythm of the cosmos. Your memory loss, your impermanence, is not separate from the stars above you. It is the same law, the same poetry, repeating itself in your mind. Think of the black hole, a place where information seems to vanish. For decades, scientists wrestled with the paradox. Does the universe truly forget what falls beyond the event horizon? The debate continues, but even the possibility that cosmic forgetting exists shows how deeply this theme is woven into reality. Perhaps the universe itself edits its story, allowing some details to dissolve so that new patterns can emerge. Perhaps forgetting is not error, but the very engine of creation. This perspective softens the fear of your own fading. To lose a memory is not to fall apart, but to participate in a larger truth. You are not the only one who forgets. The universe forgets too. The stars burn out. The galaxies unravel. The cosmic background fades into silence. Forgetting is not personal failure. It is the signature of existence itself. And yet, forgetting does not erase all trace. The star's light travels for ages, long after the star is gone. The galaxy's collision leaves ripples, gravitational waves echoing across space. The universe may forget the form, but not the influence. In the same way, your forgotten moments still shape you. Even if the details fade, the imprint remains, woven invisibly into who you are. Forgetting may take the picture, but it leaves behind the brushstrokes that alter the whole canvas. There is something comforting in this. You do not need to hold every detail to be whole. The universe does not hold every star forever, yet it remains vast, beautiful, alive. You too are vast enough to forget and still remain yourself. The fading of memory is not the erasure of meaning. It is the transformation of meaning, just as the fading of stars creates the possibility of new stars being born. So when you lose a memory, when a moment dissolves, imagine it not as vanishing into nothing, but as returning to the great forgetting of the cosmos. Perhaps your forgetting is a way of aligning with the universe itself, a rhythm shared with galaxies, with black holes, with time. Perhaps your own impermanence is proof that you belong not only to yourself, but to the vast unfolding of everything, and yet there is a tension here. For while cosmic forgetting feels natural, human forgetting can still feel cruel. When memory loss comes too fast, too soon, when the self itself begins to dissolve, the mercy of forgetting becomes shadowed by pain. Alzheimer's, dementia, the disordered flood of PTSD, The relentless flood of hypothymesia. These remind us that forgetting, when it fails or when it overwhelms, can wound as deeply as it heals. What happens when the balance is lost? When the forgetting that sustains us falters, leaving either too much loss or too little release? What happens when forgetting ceases to be poetry and becomes fracture? Forgetting in its balance is mercy. It trims, edits, softens. It allows you to carry your story without being crushed by its weight. But what happens when forgetting fails? When the rhythm is disrupted, when the mind loses too much or clings to everything? Then forgetting becomes not a gift, but a wound, revealing how delicate the architecture of memory truly is. Begin with the too much loss of Alzheimer's disease. At first, it steals in quietly. A misplaced key, a forgotten name, a pause that lingers too long. But over time, the forgetting spreads, unraveling the self thread by thread. Memories that once anchored identity dissolve. Familiar faces blur, familiar places turn strange. To live with Alzheimer's is to watch the library of the self emptied shelf by shelf. It is forgetting not as refinement but as collapse. The cruel erasure of not just moments, but of the continuity that makes you you. Loved ones often describe it as a second death. The person is still there, yet the bridge of memory that connected them has crumbled. In this failure, forgetting reveals its shadow. When it takes too much, it does not free but imprisons. Now shift to the opposite, too little forgetting. In post-traumatic stress disorder, memory refuses to fade. The event returns again and again, unsoftened, undimmed. A sound, a smell, a passing image can hurl the mind back into the terror of the original moment. The amygdala stays lit, the body floods with adrenaline, the past pierces into the present. Here forgetting's mercy is withheld. Instead of fading, the wound stays raw. Instead of softening, it repeats. The result is exhaustion, hypervigilance, a sense of being trapped in a loop. PTSD is memory-turned prison, forgetting's absence leaving no escape. There are, too, those rare lives touched by hypothymesia, an ability to recall every day in extraordinary detail. At first glance, it seems like a superpower, a mind that forgets nothing. But those who live with it often describe it as suffocating. Every joy, but also every sorrow, is equally vivid. They cannot let go of pain, cannot release what no longer matters, cannot feel the mercy of forgetting. Their lives become cluttered archives, every drawer overstuffed, every detail equally sharp. What others let dissolve, they must carry forever. Hypothymesia shows us that to remember too much is no gift, but a relentless burden. Between these extremes, too much loss, too little release, lies the fragile equilibrium that makes life livable. Forgetting is not meant to erase completely, nor to cling forever. It is meant to ebb and flow, to soften and prune, to preserve what guides you and release what would overwhelm you. When that balance falters, suffering follows. Science describes these failures in terms of plaques and tangles, neurotransmitters and misfiring circuits. But lived from within, they are not clinical but existential. To lose your memories to Alzheimer's is to lose the thread of your own story. To relive trauma endlessly is to be denied the future. To remember everything is to drown in the past. In each case, forgetting's rhythm has slipped, and life itself becomes distorted. And yet, even here, there is something to learn. These disorders remind us of what ordinary forgetting quietly accomplishes each night. We do not usually notice the mercy of memories fading, the grace of wounds softening, the relief of trivial details dissolving. But when forgetting fails, we see its necessity. We realize that to forget is not a flaw, but a function, one as vital as breathing, as sleeping, as dreaming. There is tenderness, too, in the ways we respond when forgetting falters. Families repeat stories again and again to anchor a loved one with Alzheimer's. Therapists guide those with PTSD through gentle exposure, helping the brain to relearn how to let the past soften. Even those with hyperthymesia find ways to live by shaping their flood of memory into art or writing. In each case, humans search for balance, for a way to restore forgetting's mercy when nature withholds it. Perhaps this is the deeper truth. Forgetting is not absence, but harmony. It is the rhythm that lets you move forward without losing yourself, that lets you remember without being drowned. When the rhythm falters, suffering grows, but when it flows, life feels possible, even beautiful. Forgetting fails when it goes to extremes. Too much loss, too little release. Forgetting succeeds when it moves gently, pruning, softening, renewing, and so, when you lie down at night and feel your memories blur into dream, when you sense the soft edges of the day dissolving, you are experiencing a form of protection. Each night, forgetting works quietly to keep you human, to restore the balance, to prevent both drowning and collapse. It is a fragile process, easily disturbed, but when it works, it is nothing less than salvation. Perhaps this is why the night feels so essential, so sacred. It is not only sleep that restores you, but the gentle erasures that come with it. Each evening is a promise that forgetting will sweep softly through, not cruelly, but mercifully. That tomorrow you will rise lighter, not because the past has vanished, but because it has been made bearable. Night arrives like a tide, pulling gently at the edges of the day. Shadows lengthen, sounds quiet, and the body prepares to yield. In this surrender, something hidden begins its work. Each evening, forgetting sweeps through not as a thief, not as a destroyer, but as a caretaker. It removes the clutter, softens the sharpness, releases what would weigh too heavily if it remained. Forgetting in the night is not cruel erasure, but renewal, the subtle rhythm that keeps you human. Imagine the mind as a shoreline, littered with fragments from the day, shells of conversations, driftwood of half-formed thoughts, footprints of fleeting moments. When darkness falls, the tide rolls in. By morning, the sand is smooth again. Some traces remain, but many have been washed away, returned to the sea. You do not mourn the lost footprints. You accept the clean slate the tide provides. This is how forgetting works while you sleep. It sweeps, it cleanses, it renews. Without this nightly erasure, life would become unbearable. Every trivial detail would cling, every sorrow would stay sharp, every passing thought would pile into a clutter too heavy to bear. Forgetting at night is the invisible gift that allows you to wake light enough to move forward. You rise not with everything intact, but with enough. Enough memory to guide you, enough clarity to act, enough space to breathe. Science gives us glimpses of this hidden work. As you sleep, the hippocampus replays, reorganizes, chooses. Neurons fire in patterns that sift what must be kept from what can be let go. Dreams rehearse emotions, washing them of their sting. The glymphatic system flushes molecular debris, leaving the brain cleansed. But beyond the mechanisms lies the poetry. Night as an archivist, selecting what to preserve and what to return to silence. This quiet librarian works in darkness, giving you not a complete record, but a curated one. You feel this curation in subtle ways. A worry that seemed endless yesterday is strangely lighter this morning. A detail that consumed your thoughts has softened, blurred, faded. You may not even notice the forgetting, but you feel the freedom it gives you. It is as if night has smoothed the tangled threads of thought, leaving you with fabric strong enough to carry another day. And yet, forgetting is never total. Some fragments linger. A dream you cannot shake, a conversation that echoes, an image that clings like seaweed after the tide.
Night does not erase everything.
It erases just enough. The balance is delicate, precise. To forget too much is to collapse. To forget too little is to drown. Each night, your mind performs this balancing act without your awareness, keeping you poised between memory and release. There is a gentleness to this erasure, a kindness often overlooked. Forgetting at night is not a judgment against you. It does not decide that your thoughts are worthless, your moments meaningless. It simply recognizes that you are finite, that to carry everything is to break. Forgetting accepts your limits, honors your humanity, and grants you the chance to begin again. You might think of this as the universe breathing through you. Inhale, the day fills you with detail, with noise, with life.
Exhale, the night releases what cannot be held, what should not remain.
Forgetting is this exhalation, this release. Without it, you would suffocate in your own remembering. With it, you breathe again. There is comfort, too, in knowing that every night offers this renewal. No matter how heavy the day has been, no matter how cluttered the mind has grown, night will come and forgetting will follow. You may not wake entirely free, but you will wake lighter. This promise is one of life's quiet mercies, that each evening offers not just rest, but renewal. And so when you close your eyes, you are not only falling into sleep, you are entering the embrace of forgetting, letting it sweep softly through your mind. You are yielding to a rhythm as old as life itself, one that has sustained you since childhood, one that sustains even now. Forgetting in the night is not an absence to fear, but a presence to trust, the silent work that keeps you whole. As you listen to the silence of night,
As you feel yourself drifting, you might ask, what is it I am losing?
what details will dissolve, what edges will soften, what weight will be lifted by morning? You cannot know precisely. Forgetting does not announce itself. It works quietly, invisibly, leaving only the feeling of lightness in its wake. But perhaps the better question is, what will I gain? What space will open because of what I let go? What clarity, what renewal, what freedom will come because the night has swept clean the clutter? Forgetting is not only subtraction, it is also addition, the creation of room for the new. This is the mercy of night's gentle erasures. Each evening they return you to yourself, not unchanged, but lighter, renewed, able to rise once more. Forgetting is the hand that clears the page, the tide that smooths the sand, the breath that releases so you may breathe again. And yet, beneath this rhythm lies a final reflection, one that leads us onward. If forgetting in the night gives us renewal, what does forgetting in life itself give us? What larger comfort lies in the unknown, in the memories we cannot hold, in the mysteries that dissolve beyond our reach? We have traveled together through the landscapes of memory, wandered into the quiet territories of forgetting, watched as science revealed its hidden mechanics and poetry revealed its hidden meanings. Now we arrive at the final reflection, the place where the threads gather into silence, the comfort of the unknown. For there is something tender in admitting that you cannot hold everything. Your mind is not an archive that keeps every scrap of paper, every fleeting breath. It is not a vault for infinite storage. It is something gentler, something more fragile, something more alive.
And being alive means you must forget.
You must let go. You must surrender to the truth that much of what happens to you, much of what you feel and see and know, will dissolve into the unknown. This is not failure. It is design. To forget is not to be broken, but to be human. It is to accept the limits of your mind and to find peace in those limits. For just as you exhale what you cannot keep, just as you release each day into night, so too must you let your memories flow through you, carrying only what can be carried, leaving the rest behind. Think of the night again. Each evening, as sleep takes you, you do not know what will remain by morning.
Some moments will stay, others will vanish.
You cannot choose precisely. The forgetting will happen whether you resist or yield. And yet by morning you are renewed. You rise not empty, but lighter. You rise not diminished, but restored. What you have lost you cannot name, but what you have gained is the ability to begin again. This is the paradox of forgetting. In losing, you are given. In letting go, you are freed. You may never know exactly what dissolves in the dark, but you feel its effect. A mind made spacious, a heart made lighter. A self-made new toy. Science can tell us how forgetting works. The pruning and the editing, the consolidation and the interference. But science cannot tell us what it feels like to be carried by forgetting, to surrender each night to its tide. That is something only you know. And perhaps it is enough not to know the details, but to trust in the rhythm, to trust that even in the unknown, something merciful is at work. There is comfort in this unknown. Comfort in not needing to control every detail, not needing to preserve every fragment, not needing to resist the flow. Forgetting is not an enemy to fight, but a rhythm to rest into. The tide will come, the night will sweep through, and you will wake with enough. Perhaps this is why curiosity itself can feel like peace. You do not need to solve every mystery. You do not need to hold every answer. To be curious is to live gently with the unknown, to look into the vastness and say, I do not know, and that is beautiful. Forgetting teaches you the same lesson, that not knowing, not remembering, not holding, these two can be forms of peace. And so, as we draw this journey to its close, let us return to where we began. Welcome, dear listener, to Late Night Science. When we opened together, I invited you to share where you were listening from. A quiet room in the city, a small town under the stars, a hospital bed, a sleepless night in a faraway place. Those places and moments are now scattered among us, woven into this shared exploration. You may not remember every detail of what you have heard, and that is as it should be. You will carry with you what matters, and the rest will dissolve into the unknown. I want to thank you, softly, sincerely, for joining me on this journey. Thank you for lending your attention, your time, your presence in the night. Thank you for trusting me to guide you through these reflections, to walk slowly with you through the corridors of memory and forgetting. It is no small thing in a world so full of noise to choose to listen. If you have found comfort here, if you have found curiosity sparked or burdens softened, I invite you gently to continue with us. Subscribe if you haven't already, so that these quiet explorations can find you again in the nights to come. And if you wish, share in the comments where you are listening from tonight. It has become its own kind of map, a constellation of listeners scattered across the world, each light a reminder that we are not alone in our wandering. Now let us rest in the comfort of what cannot be held. We cannot carry every detail, and that is mercy. We cannot know what we forget each night, and that is peace. The comfort of the unknown is that it does not demand we remember, only that we trust in the rhythm of letting go. When you close your eyes tonight, know that forgetting will sweep through you, soft as a tide. You will not be able to name precisely what you lose. You may never know exactly what is taken, but you will wake lighter, freer, with space enough for the day ahead. This is the quiet gift. Not to hold everything, but to hold enough. So ask yourself, what do you lose each night? And what do you quietly gain?
What dissolves into the unknown and what rises again as morning light?
The answer may never be clear, but the question itself is a kind of peace. And perhaps that is where we leave one another, in the embrace of the unknown, where memory and forgetting dance together, where life is carried forward not by what remains, but by what is released. May your night be gentle. May your forgetting be merciful. May your curiosity remain even in the unknown.